Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mile High Sports Today. I'm your host, Shawn Drotar. Of course, as the Broncos get ready to play the Bills in the wild card round on Sunday, making sure that we get all around the Mile High Sports world to make sure we bring you all the best information about it. Joining me to start off the show is our friend Cody Roark, Ms. Miller from Fox 31 and Channel 2 will join us later today. And we'll also have Nate Lundy, of course, dropping in to talk about more as well. But welcoming Cody to the show. Cody, thanks so much for the time. Obviously, we're delighted to have you every day this week for the Broncos. We mentioned yesterday, you picked the Broncos to go 10-7, and you were exactly right. And there's reasons for that. And a lot of it goes to Bo Nix. And I wanted to dig a little deeper into Bo's numbers and how he got to where he got. The 12th pick in the draft, a lot of people that are the draft Nick said that he really didn't have a first round grade on him. You know what that means? I don't necessarily know, because we know in the NFL, more than just about anything, it's really about fit, isn't it?
Yeah, look, fit environment. I mean, you talk about, okay, hey, does this place where this player is going to end up, do they have pieces around him that will allow him to continuously grow while highlighting his strengths? And look, I think so much of it, when you look at where the Broncos are at, there were a lot of question marks, coming into it, after Bo Nix was drafted. It was like, okay, hey, you're going to have Cortland Sutton. Is he going to be around here? Because really at that time, the contract stuff hadn't necessarily been settled yet with Cortland at that point. And then obviously they're able to work out some, a rework deal that obviously vamps up some incentives for the Broncos. And certainly for Cortland Sutton, he got 1.5 million, I think, this season in incentives for, amassing a, net yardage total like that. He had over, 1,000. But obviously, for a guy like Bo Nix, it's always funny. Like, you look at how he started this season, right? Denver 0 for 2. He had a rough showing against the Seattle Seahawks in his debut. And then he had a rough game against the Pittsburgh Steelers and that tough defense that they had there at that time. They're 0-2, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Everyone's already writing off Bo Nix. And, it's just a great exercise, I think, and why we talk about how people need to have patience, and not only just the fans, but coaches and organizations, is that allow these players to grow, to be into a position where they can make mistakes without worrying, looking over their shoulder every single second. That's been the problem for the Broncos in the last however many years. With Shawn Payton in place and the foundation that he has built, that was never something Bo Nix had to worry about. There was never any concern about, I'm worried about Bo Nix. Shawn was like, hey, we're going to let it play out. And I think that's the most important thing. And once again, I'm going to get my little jab in here too, because everyone uses things like EPA, ADOT. I tell you what, I asked the Broncos coach, his thoughts on that off the record. And he looked at me and he smirked and was like, shh, we don't care about that shit. So, that right there is probably the most important stuff to matter. Like, everyone on Twitter, all the stat guys, they want to like EPA, ADOT, CPOE, whatever acronyms you want to put out there. NFL teams don't care about that.
Well, I'll push back a little bit with that. I'll defend the fellow statisticians here, because there are some of it the teams will tell you they don't pay any attention to, and then they absolutely do, because you have people say, oh, we don't care about any of those stats, but then they care about things like a 40 in a combine, in which you will never at any point in time in the NFL run 40 yards in a straight line without full pads. So, I mean, there's some picking and choosing, and there is
I think they care more about, like, is somebody explosive? I think that's probably the more likely thing. Like,
and that's a little bit of what the statistics try to build to. And I do get that. I get the point that it's always the inherent battle, right, between we've moved the jocks and nerds fight into the total math idea now that too much math has penetrated into sports. But the truth is that they work in concert, right? When you have two players who, when you look at them with your eyes and say, hey, these guys are somewhat similar, how do we find a way to delineate what you're seeing? It's another tool in the toolbox. Anybody who says, I'm only going to worry about scouting and never touch statistics is equally as foolish as anyone who says, I'm only going to focus on ADOT and CPOE and not care about what I see on the screen. That's equally dumb. What it is we live in an opportunity-filled world in which you can utilize both of these things to help fill in the gaps of what each can't see. You can look at all those numbers as much as you'd like, and let's do that right off the bat here, because this is when you look at Bo Nix stats on the season. Obviously, they're pretty impressive. They don't jump out at you as necessarily a stunning number when you're looking at quarterback numbers across the board. But let's take a look at for an example of where Bo Nix is. 3,775 yards on the season, okay? But when you look at the idea behind last year, for the Denver Broncos, and you look at what Russell Wilson did compared to what Bo Nix did, statistically, there's actually quite a bit of similarity between the two players from a statistical standpoint, right? Wilson threw for fewer yards. I get that, but he also had 2 fewer games. He threw for 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. In this case, Bo Nix threw for 29 and 12. Nick's QBR, which is kind of an overall rating that I think even you would agree is better than the old school passer rating, which is inherently piled on the completion percentage, was 57.2. In Russell Wilson's case, it wasn't all that impressive either, but it was 51.3. He was 22nd in the league, and Nix is 18th in the league. So Nix has been better than Wilson for sure, but from a quantifiable standpoint, from a statistical standpoint, they actually look pretty similar. And we could make the argument that the Broncos defense is the biggest reason for the turnaround, not the quarterback position. But this is where statistics fail you. Bo Nix is a better fit for the Denver Broncos because of their head coach. He's a better fit for his style of play. Russell Wilson, because of his height and his style of play, tends to roll out, get out of the pocket, try to make things happen. Nix does the same thing, but he doesn't hold on to the ball as long. So these are the stylistic things that the statistics don't tell you the whole thing. And of course, maybe the statistic that matters the most, Russell Wilson is making money he's making, and Bo Nix is on a rookie deal.
Yeah, and look, I think if anybody, you put Russell Wilson, Bo Nix side by side, and you watch them, on two screens that are right next to each other inside the offense, it looks entirely different. And you could say that Bo Nix has played better in that system. I think with stats, like, it always changes every year. Like this was a weird year around the NFL. I think when we look at passers, like, success in the passing game, Joe Burrow, I think, is a little bit of an anomaly and an exception, but you look at Josh Allen, you look at Patrick Mahomes, they didn't necessarily have the years from the overall volume standpoint that they've had before. But I think when you talk about efficiency, that's something that matters. Like, and for Bo Nix, the number one area in which he helped the Broncos also take a step forward was not taking as many sacks as Russell Wilson did, and also putting them in a position where when they got to the red zone, they were finding ways to come up with points and score touchdowns. And that's something that they couldn't do with Russell Wilson. They were one of the worst offenses in the NFL in 2023 in the red zone, but they were one of the best offenses, obviously, this year in the NFL in terms of red zone productivity. That, obviously they finished top 10 in scoring, which hadn't been the case. And for the Broncos to have a quarterback and a rookie at that, put up the numbers in terms of yards, but also get the Broncos to 10 wins. That is probably the more impressive feature when we look at where things are at. And then when you look at the history also Bo made this year, surpassing Baker Mayfield for the second most passing touchdowns by a rookie in NFL history, that's exciting to see. I mean, it's a hard trait to do. And also we talk about completion percentage. You've seen him be able to attack different levels of the field, whether that's downfield, the middle of the field, which that was not a prominent part of the Broncos offense in 2023. And also in the short to intermediate, they have a quarterback who can operate and do the things that Sean Payton wants him to do, which I think is the most important thing. And I think what's even more impressive is that he did it with arguably less around him this season than what Russell Wilson had in Denver last year.
Certainly on offense, I think that's fair. Although it is worth noting that the Broncos' offensive line looks vastly better, especially when it comes to the pass blocking. Now, some of that is Nix's ability to get rid of the sacks, and you're 100% right. Nix took 24 sacks this year, Wilson 45 last year, and some of that is the nature of Russell Wilson holds on to the ball a really long time. And as a sidebar, when the draft rolls around and all of you are looking up towards Boulder and wondering where Shedeur Sanders is going, eventually, trust me, when you read all the pre-draft reports, every single one of them is going to say he needs to be more decisive with the ball and get it out faster, because that's what the NFL's about. For Russell Wilson, that's been a drawback. And when he was younger, he could afford to take more sacks here and there. You still had DK Metcalf or Golden Tate or Tyler Lockett or whomever streaking down the sideline, guys you could throw it to. And as he got older and lost a little bit of zip on the fastball, lost a little bit of the foot speed, it becomes more problematic. How you age matters. Not a problem with the Broncos and Bo Nix, but that efficiency is a big part of it. And one of the things that's a challenge, though, we'll get into a little bit of the things he needs to work on with that efficiency, is the Broncos were still near the league's top, or more accurately, the bottom, when it comes to drives that were 3 and outs. Now, granted, that's not all on Nix. Some of that is on the Broncos' talent. Some of that's, quite frankly, on Sean Payton and his play calling as well. But when we look at the beginning, you brought up the 4 interceptions in the first 2 games. You and I were a couple of the folks that never wavered. After the draft, we consistently said Bo Nix will start day 1. Ignore all the noise. Ignore everyone who says it might be Stidham. It might be Wilson. It's going to be Nix day 1. We knew it. I think some other people knew it, but for the most part, there was still this mythology that there was going to be a quarterback competition. And that's why I pushed back with you a little bit on, a coach says this, because you know what coaches like to say? We'll have a competition at every position. They're not always going to do that. That's not true. And Bo Nix was always going to be the guy. But when he comes in and we talked about how difficult it was going to be in that opener in Seattle for your debut. 4 of his 12 picks, a full third, came in the first 2 games. From that first couple of weeks, if we were to look at the season and say as close to quarters as you can, I know it's the 17 games now, you can't. But what has Bo Nix gotten notably better at? You do that terrific film room study that we see on the YouTube channel. What has Bo Nix got notably better at as the year has gone along to get him from where he started in week 1 to what we saw against a Chiefs team, to be fair, filled with a lot of backups in week 18?
I'll just say he sees the field better. He's understanding how the coverages are. He's understanding the different disguise looks that defenses are going to try to throw at him. Obviously, the NFL, we primarily see a too-high shell consistently across the NFL, and that's all by design to try to take away the deep shots. And so when that's the case, it's how do you attack a cover 2? How do you attack a cover 3? How do you attack a cover 4? If they're going man on one side and a zone on the other, how do you recognize where the best matchup is going to be? And I think that's where Bo has consistently gotten better. And the thing I think that stands out about Bo when he's in the drop back, not necessarily on play action, I think it's when he's under center, he's doing a 3-step or 5-step drop. Eye manipulation has been a big key for him as well. He does a really good job of looking off of safety and then going to the spot in which, he's designed to go to. That's something that is hard to do. Not a lot of quarterbacks have that trait in them. But he's also got the athleticism as well to extend plays with his legs. So what Sean Payton said the biggest key was for them this season in terms of what they're looking back for quarterback play and why they moved on from Russell Wilson. You need to be able to win within the pocket. Bo Nix has shown that he can do that, but he also still has that ability to get outside and create plays off schedule with his legs. And I think that's a promising sign there. Now, obviously, we can all acknowledge that, Bo, while he's had a very terrific rookie season, there's still some things that Bo Nix can work on. I think sometimes it's maybe not trusting something's going to open there, right? Sometimes maybe it could be bailing a clean pocket. Obviously he's trying to create with his legs, but sometimes stay there. Like that's what Shawn wants. Sometimes stay in the pocket there and trust that it's going to come open and then find a way. I think so much of it is predicated on the fact that Denver hasn't had a really consistent run game this year. And that certainly puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. When we talk about, having as many drop backs in terms of passer as Bo had this season, it's because teams were like, hey, you can't run the ball against us. We're going to drop back 6 guys into coverage. We want you to throw. And we're going to try to take away the deep stuff there because we feel like we can compress your drive by just forcing you to throw it short. We believe in the guys that we have defensively that can rally and tackle. That has been how defenses have played the Broncos. And it's not because, Bo Nix is limited. It's because Denver's offense at times has limited itself with the lack of tight end production, with, inconsistencies as who's the number 2 wide receiver here for Denver when teams are focusing on Cortland Sutton. And also can't run the ball consistently enough. That has been the theme and the problem for them all year. I think we're going to see a lot of other things kind of unlock and develop here if they can get those things going. Is it going to happen in the playoff game against Buffalo? Highly unlikely. It's hard. It's possible. Yes, they can do that. But I think the bigger challenge here is trying to figure out how do you get this going forward for Bo, because this has to be a foundation, not only just for the Broncos in 2025, but if Bo Nix is the quarterback, you need to have this foundation present because that helps any quarterback in a situation. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes this year, Mahomes had a down year. I mean, he didn't even get consideration in Pro Bowl voting. Bo Nix had more votes than him in that situation. But the thing is at times where Patrick Mahomes was struggling with throwing the football, they had a run game. Even when Isaiah Pacheco was out, Kareem Hunt came in and was creating opportunities for them combined with good defensive play. So much of today's game is not just, do you have a great quarterback, right? We've seen what's happened. You can have a great quarterback like Joe Burrow, but if your special teams and your defense aren't playing up to a standard and they're not helping you out, it doesn't matter what you do if those other elements at least can't balance itself out a little bit.
Yeah, Nix finishes 3rd on the Broncos in rushing, but only 84 yards out of being the team leader in rushing. And to give you an idea of how ineffective it was, he led the team in rushing per carry with guys that played more than 3 games, 4.7, 4 touchdowns tied with Javonte Williams for the most, 6 runs of 20 or more yards. All of those, including the 41 first downs, led the Broncos. And that's not new because Russell Wilson had much the same last year for the Broncos. So something that, even though Bridges a couple different seasons in quarterbacks, Jocks, a Sean Payton offense. That tells me that's a little bit more on Sean Payton and George Payton, that they need to help their quarterback out more. The last parts for Nix that I would ask you about, and obviously it's not for this Sunday necessarily, but as he tries to get up for the Broncos, is you clearly have your guy for the future, and you want him to be a top 10 guy in the league. That bar now is high. I mean, think about Mahomes and Allen and Lamar Jackson and Goff and so many of the other great quarterbacks. Hurts. Go down the whole league. Herbert. There's guys left and right. So to crack into that top 10, the first thing that I look at, I think you hit on it, the idea of trusting when things come open. You have to believe in your guys and get that timing right. But the other part to me is there is still an issue at times with footwork. And when you look at quarterbacks, especially when they're moving, or especially when that maybe get a little bit surprised and throw off the back foot, Nix is missing passes that he might have been able to hit. And he sure would love to have him back. I talked about the one he missed to Javonte Williams on Sunday that ended his streak of 18 consecutive completions. But how much better can a guy really get in their footwork from year one to year two? We know that sometimes with quarterbacks, there are things you can fix and there are things you can't fix.
Yeah, I think Bo's footwork isn't necessarily a big issue. It's created some issues from time to time, but it's not like something you look and say like, wow, this guy has footwork issues on a consistent basis. I think it's more so of him trying to balance staying in the pocket versus being able to, get outside a run. Because at Oregon, he would get outside the pocket quite a bit to set up opportunities. I think he's underrated in throwing on the run too, but a lot of it just comes with more reps. And I think if you have things in place, I feel like maybe Bo's issue at times this season, there have been some moments where he's pressed a little too much. But that's just like trying to figure out like, hey, what can I do? What can't I do? Obviously, you talk about the competitive nature of trying to win games. You're going to try to do certain things. What can you get away with? I think that's also another question as well. It's just about being able to play. And you only do that by getting reps and by going out there and doing it. You can see what you can get away with. And certainly, I think just there's a confidence level in Bo that we saw, like, it would have been easy, we've seen it with other quarterbacks that Denver's had since 2016, that it would have been easy to lose confidence after an 0-2 start when you're 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and everyone's already writing you off now saying, wow, see, look, he's a bust. We told you this was going to happen. It's easy to get on that train, but he doesn't subscribe to that train of thinking. Like, Bo does a really good job of not really paying attention to stuff that's going on social media or what the national pundits are saying. He's very self-critical, but I think he's, his ability to accept coaching has been a huge thing. He's been one of the most coachable guys ever. And you go back to his college coaches, they'll tell you the same thing. He's competitive, but he's coachable. Those are things I think that have helped put Bo in the position he's in right now. And look, I still think there is consideration for him for Offensive Rookie of the Year. We all now know the Broncos 2025 opponents have been announced there. We know that next year he will face Jaden Daniels, who right now is considered the front runner for that award. Very curious to see how it plays out here. But like I said, Bo's got a lot to continue to build on, but there's a lot to be excited about with him.
Yeah, I think for most people that it's been exceeding virtually every expectation. That's obviously a good sign for the Broncos and a great sign for Broncos fans who've been looking for something to believe in. And now in a quarterback, it appears that they have one. So that's awfully exciting.
You missed a perfect opportunity right there to say something to believe in.
I wrote it into the show, but I wanted to say,
come on, my man.
I was John Stockton finger rolling that up for you to dunk.
All right, there we go. A windmill jam. We got it.
We'll find out how this goes on Sunday. But the beauty of it for Broncos fans, regardless how this turns out, the season has been a resounding success. Bo Nix's performance has been outstanding. The Broncos arrow is pointed firmly and directly up. It's in a great position no matter what happens out in Buffalo. Cody, we'll get a chance to talk to you tomorrow as the game gets a little bit closer. Obviously, for everyone to check out the Locked On Broncos, check out the film rooms that Cody's putting together, everything that he puts together on Mile High Sports. Nobody covers quite like Cody Roark does. So make sure you give him a follow and pay attention to everything he's putting together. Thanks for the time, my friend. We'll catch you tomorrow.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you for having me.
All right. Thanks so much, Cody, joining us. Always good to have an opportunity to talk to him. We'll have him back tomorrow as well. We have a chance to talk to Mick Miller coming up in just a bit, and we'll talk to Nate Lundy in just a moment.